recap. So I'm going to go over all the major concepts and hopefully share some information that's helpful to you as you prepare for the test. So let's jump right in. Okay, first thing you're going to be tested on is the law of demand and the law of supply. Now this won't necessarily show up like, hey, what is the law of demand or what is the law of supply? But you do need to understand it in order to understand one of the key concepts here, which is when there's a change in price, it doesn't actually shift the entire curve, it's just movement along the curve. So if we look over here on the graph on the left, we can see the law of demand. We see that when the price declines, is shown here. So we start at $20, a quantity of like, I don't know, what's that, 4.5? But when the price went down to 10, so it was a decrease in price, we saw a dramatic increase in the quantity. Went from like 4.5 to like 13 all the way up here. So as a result, we can see that law of demand. When price falls, people demand more quantity. And where this is relevant is they'll oftentimes give you a, for example, say which of these would not change demand, not quantity demanded, but demand. And one of those options would be price, and that's your answer. Price does not change demand, it changes quantity demanded. It's part of the relationship being shown here, right? Here is the price of DVD movies and the quantity demanded. So it's a part of that relationship that creates the shape of the curve. That's the law of demand. So change in price, not a shifter, not a determinant, just movement along the curve. Okay. Pop over here to the other one, we see the law of supply. Law of supply is when prices go up, the quantity supply goes up, and that's because businesses are pursuing profit. But when they see the price is higher for a good or service, businesses that are producing other things are going to stop production on that, and they're going to jump over and start producing this thing that when they sold for a high price, it make a bunch of money. So that's the law of supply. And we see that here. When we have $1, only 20 businesses are willing to supply at that, or only businesses are willing to supply only 20 units, I should say. When the price goes from $1 all the way up here to $5, that quantity supply goes up to 100. And again, where you'll see this is not necessarily what is the law of supply, but they'll say, hey, there's a change in price. What's the result? And the result could be, they'll give you options. One of them might be change of supply, shifts it to the right. One might be change in quantity supplied. And the answer is change in quantity supplied. Quantity supplied is what you get when you dash down on just the supply curve. Change in supply is a shift of the whole curve, right? So this right here, quantity supplied. But a shift of the curve over here, like so, is a change in supply altogether. Okay, hope that makes some sense. Let's move on to the next concept. This concept is equilibrium, disequilibrium, and quantity. So we put these two curves together. We have our demand, or downward sloping demand right here, upward sloping supply. Both the law of demand and law of supply are in action. But from this point out, prices are determined not, because they tell you, but because of the marketplace. The market determines the price. And it's this negotiation between the competing interests of demanders and suppliers. Demanders want the price low, suppliers want the price high, so they'll negotiate quantity and price until they meet in the middle, right? So for example, right here, if we had a price of P2, then we dash over, let me get my pen up here. We dash over, we hit our first intersection here. We're intersecting the demand curve right here. So this Q1 is actually quantity demanded at this point. We keep on dashing until we hit our second collision. That's right here. We're at a disequilibrium at this high price. We dash down. This Q2 is actually going to be quantity supplied because I'm intersecting the supply curve. So I put an S down here. So if my supply is very high, my demand is very low at this high price, then I'm going to have a surplus. We're producing too much. And so what's going to happen when we produce too much? Well, businesses are going to have a bunch of leftover inventory. In order to move that inventory so they don't lose more money, they're going to have to reduce the quantity that they're supplying. So the quantity supplied is going to go down. And while they do that, in order to do that and move those units, they're going to reduce the price. When they reduce the price, demanders respond by increasing their demand. So I'll say that again. When we have a surplus, the businesses are going to look at this and say, hey, we've got all this leftover inventory. What are we going to do? So they're going to reduce their supply, stop producing as much, and they're going to push down the price. And in doing so, they're going to increase demand. All of that means, let me get a different color here. All of that means we're moving towards equilibrium, right? If we're at a surplus and it's not a government price ceiling, the government price ceiling can't change because it's a law. But if we have a surplus because the price is too high, then we're going to move towards equilibrium, right there to QE. Everything's always moving towards that. Okay, let me clear this out and let's look at the other side of it. Okay, get back to my red. If we are down here at P1, price 1, low price, what's going to happen? Well, I dash over until I hit for my first collision. And this one right here, I'm intersecting my supply curve. This should make sense. Price is low. Businesses don't supply as much as they normally would. So that's going to be my quantity supplied. We keep on going. I hit my second intersection right here with the demand curve. That's going to be quantity demanded. So when demand's really high and quantity supplied is really low, we have something we call a shortage. What's going to happen when there's a shortage? What's going to happen is demanders are going to bid the price up. The price is going to start rising towards PE. And then at the same time, suppliers are going to increase the amount they're offering because they're going to see that price increase as a signal and they're going to flock to this market to try and make money off of it. But when the price rises, the demanders are going to respond by decreasing their demand, the quantity demanded. And so we're going to keep on doing that until we end up right here at equilibrium, where quantity demanded at this point, equilibrium, right there, QD, see if I can write it. It's not a Q. QD equals QS. We're always moving towards that equilibrium point when we're in a surplus or a disequilibrium, I should say, surplus or a shortage. Okay? Any price other than equilibrium will always produce a surplus or a shortage. And as a result, we'll have these corresponding movements. Okay, I hope that makes some logical sense. You don't really have to draw this out. Just know what happens when there's a shortage or a surplus. That a shortage, demand is going to bid up the price. That's going to attract businesses into the market, and then subsequently, demanders are going to demand less. And then when there's a surplus, the suppliers are going to have to lower the price and lower the amount that they're supplying in order to move those units. And when they do that, lower the price, it's going to increase the demanders until we hit equilibrium. Always moving towards equilibrium. Okay, let's keep going. Next concept. Maybe. There we go. Close that. Next concept, shifters of demand. This is one of the most heavily assessed out of all of the concepts. So let's jump right in. So when I'm saying a shift of demand, it's important to note that I'm talking about a shift of the demand curve, not a shift or a change in the quantity demanded. Remember, a change in quantity demanded is just a change in price, movement along the curve. Okay, so let's assume that this point in the middle is equilibrium point, and then let's look at a couple of these, and I'll do a demand shift in each direction so you see what's happening to the price and the quantity. That's the most important part of this, and then we can move on from there. Okay, so the first thing that can happen is a change in taste. Change in taste means something outside of the market has made this more attractive, right? So let's say that this is a, I don't know, let's say it's a pickle market. We got pickles. Love me some pickles. All right, we got a pickles market right here. Now, change in taste in pickles. Some super famous person like Drake. Did I do it? Is that a famous person? So a famous person eats pickles in like a music video or something, and has a music video called Pickles. Something I don't know. Has a dog named Pickles. Anyways, people see that music video and they're like, "Ooh, pickles are cool," and so everybody starts buying pickles because they want to be like Drake. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have an increase in the demand of pickles at every price. High price pickles, we're going to want more of those. Low price pickles, we're going to want more of those. People are going to demand more pickles at every single price because it's not about price. It's about how attracted they are to the status associated with eating a pickle. All right, so we draw in our new demand curve with our two arrows. We put these, and then we have a new intersection right here. We're going to dash. Dashing is hard here, but I'm going to try. Dash over to our price axis, price on the y-axis. So price is going up, as we can see. And then we're going to dash down from our new equilibrium, Q2. And so we can see that our quantity is increasing as well. This is not the quantity demanded. This is the quantity sold. Quantity demanded and supplied. Remember, this is equilibrium right here. Right? This point is equilibrium now. So that's where quantity demand is equal to quantity supplied. In other words, everything being produced is being bought. So that's perfect harmony right there. So that's what happens if there's a change in taste that's positive. But there could be a change in taste that's negative. Things could get really, really bad. Maybe pickles are causing some sort of, are carrying some sort of bacteria, which is deadly. Turns people into zombies. I don't know. Pickle zombies, that'd be scary. So what's going to happen here? Well, if people think that pickles are going to change them into zombies, we're going to have a shift in the opposite direction, right? Demand is going to shift, not quantity demanded, right? Demand is going to shift at every single price. We're not going to want expensive pickles. We're not going to want cheap pickles. We're not going to want any pickles because it's not about the price, right? It's really about the fact that they are causing people to turn into zombies. So we draw in our new curve. We'll call this D3 because we have curves here, D3 there. And then we'll put in our new equilibrium point right here. We're going to dash over and get our price. We'll call this P3. Dash down and get our quantity. We'll call this Q3. And we'll see that price is going down and quantity is going down. In other words, there's a direct relationship in the shift of demand between price and quantity and demand. That means if demand is going up, price is going up, quantity is going up. If demand is going down, price is going down, quantity is going down. They're all moving in the same direction every single time. Okay? That should make some things, especially with our double shifts, a little bit easier. Okay, I'm just going to move through the rest of these determinants and we'll look at this chart over here and I'll just reference it as we go. Okay, give me a different color marker here. All right, next one is a change in the number of buyers. This means that there's an influx of the population or there's a change in the status. Don't mix this up with a change in taste. Change in taste is we want more of it because we think it's cooler than it was before. We think it's better than it was before. Or vice versa, we think it's worse than it was before. Change in number of buyers just means the status has changed. People have entered the market. People that never wanted to buy pickles before are like, yeah, I'm a pickle person now. Normally it's an influx of a population that causes something like this to occur. So if there's an increase in the number of buyers, we're going to go from D to D2. We're going to move in that direction. Our price is going to rise because demand has gone up, and our quantity is going to go down. And vice versa. If we have fewer people in the marketplace, fewer people are able to eat pickles for some reason, then demand is going to shift left, right? They're going to demand fewer pickles at every price because it's not about the price. The price will go down as a result, and the quantity will go down because they're all moving in the same direction. Next up is probably the most difficult out of all of the concepts. There's a couple of questions on these two, which is substitute and complementary goods. Substitute goods and complementary goods. There's always an other and a primary. So we're looking at how a change in the price of the other good impacts the demand of the primary good. If we're doing pickles here, what's a substitute for pickles? Tomatoes? Yeah, let's go with tomatoes. That's the closest thing I think of. They both go on burgers, right? So you can have pickles or you can have tomatoes. You have two choices. So let's say that pickles are the primary because we have a graph of pickles, and tomatoes are the other. So let's say tomatoes go up in price, or more expensive. Well, if I was choosing between tomatoes and pickles, and tomatoes are more expensive, then I'm going to choose more pickles. So we're going to see an increase, a demand shift to the right because of that. In other words, for a substitute good, when the price of the other good goes up, the demand for the primary good goes up. They move in the same direction. Okay? Then vice versa, if you're looking at tomatoes and you're looking at pickles, and tomatoes are less expensive, the price has fallen. So the price has fallen on the other good. The primary good of pickles, what's going to happen there? Well, I'm choosing between tomatoes and pickles. Tomatoes are cheaper now. They have equal value to me. So I'm going to choose more tomatoes and fewer pickles. So the demand for pickles is going to go down. In other words, for a substitute good, when the price of the other good goes down, then the demand for the primary good also goes down. They're moving in the same direction. Okay? So that's substitutes. Substitutes move in the same direction. Complementary move in opposite directions. Complementaries are opposites. Okay? So when the price goes up, what's a complementary good with pickles? Pickles and onion, let's say. You put them both on a sandwich, right? So let's say that pickles and onions are complementary good. If you have one, you want the other, okay? So if the price of onions, that's the other, onions goes up, then what's going to happen to the demand for the pickles? Well, if I only buy those together, onions are more expensive. Well, now I can buy fewer onions and pickles. And so my demand for pickles is going to go down. In other words, when the price of the other complementary good goes up, the demand for the primary good goes down. They move in opposite directions. Okay? And then vice versa. If the onions are less expensive, they're cheap, they're on sale. I'm going to go in like, whoa, onions, 10 for $1. That's amazing. I'm going to get a bunch of onions, right? But what do I need to go with my onions? I need pickles. And so I have all these lower price onions. I'm going to demand more pickles as a result. So price went down for onions and demand went up for pickles. So they move in opposite directions. The price goes down for a complementary good. The demand goes up for the primary good, opposite direction. Substitute, same direction. Complementary, opposite direction. Okay, let's keep going. Next up is consumer expectations. Consumer expectations should make some sense. I love the image of Black Friday. It really helps me understand this, or any mega sale, right? If I expect prices to be lower in the future, then today, we're always shifting this curve for today, not for the future. So today, I'm going to demand less. If I expect prices to be lower in the future, I know if sale's coming up, I'm going to demand less today because I'm going to wait for that sale. So demand's actually going to shift left, pushing the price down. So from D to D3, pushing the price down and pushing the quantity down. And vice versa. If I believe that the price in the future is going to go up, right? I'm in the middle of the Black Friday sale. I know Saturday, not so amazing. The prices are going to start rising again. Well, my demand today is going to go up because I want to get the deal, right? So demand is going to shift to the right if I expect prices to be higher in the future. And as a result, price is going to rise with it and quantity is going to rise with it. Okay. And there's also an expectation with incomes. That's the other side of it, right? So this has to do with the amount of money I'm bringing in. Prices has to do with how much I'm paying out, income, how much I'm bringing in. But if I expect to bring in less money in the future, I know I'm going to lose my job. Then I'm going to demand fewer pickles and just about any other good, because I want to save my money. I want to make sure that I'm going to be okay. And then if I expect my income to rise dramatically in the future, I'm going to demand a whole bunch more today because I'll just pay it off later. Demand is going to shift right. Price will go up. Quantity will go up. Okay. Final one, change in income. Change in income, actual change in income, not expected. Actual change in income has different impact depending on the type of good. Normal good has the impact you would attach to having more money, right? You buy the things you want. So these are wanted goods. Normal are wanted goods. So when your income goes up, you demand more of those wanted goods. And when your income goes down, you demand less of those wanted goods. Right? That makes some logical sense. More money, buy the things you want. Right? So if income goes up, my demand is going to shift to the right. It's going to push up the price. It's going to push up the quantity for that good. Vice versa. If incomes are falling for everybody for a normal good, it's going to shift demand to the left. Prices are going to fall and the quantity is going to fall for that wanted good. And then you have inferior goods. Inferior goods are not wanted goods. These are the goods that you have to get because you can't afford the other stuff, right? So ramen noodles are a great image for this one, right? The broke college student can't afford anything but ramen noodles. When their income goes up, demand for ramen noodles falls, right? Income goes up. We're not going to buy ramen noodles when we're making 100K. So demand shifts left, prices fall, quantity falls as a result. And vice versa. When my income falls, when I lose all my money, or when I go to college and I'm broke, my demand for ramen noodles and thrift store clothes and used goods and just about any other inferior, unwanted good is going to rise because I can't afford anything else. So demand is going to shift to the right, price goes up, quantity goes up. Hope that made some sense. Let's keep rolling. Next up is shifters of supply. These can get a little confusing, and there's a lot of them. There's actually 7. There we go. There's 7 of them, but really just keep in mind one key thing. Is it costing more or less? And these are things that shift supply at every single price. Because it's not about the price here when we're talking about this, about the cost. Price has to do with revenue. So when price goes up, quantity supply goes up because my revenue is going to be higher, all other things constant. But everything we're going to talk about is about the cost, right? What does it cost me? And if that's rising, I'm going to supply less. And if my costs are going down, my profits are going to be higher. I'm going to supply more. Okay, so let's dive in. Let me get one of my little pens going here. Here we go. So we have our initial equilibrium. At this point, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, right? And let's give ourselves a market. Well, why don't we just stick with the pickles? I was on a roll with pickles, so pickles and red this time, I guess. All right, so what's going to happen? Let's say that we have a change in resource price. Resources are inputs, things that you use to produce things. So you use cucumbers to make pickles, I think, pretty sure. You use cucumbers to make pickles. So let's say cucumbers double in price, really expensive. What's going to happen to the cost of producing pickles? Well, I have to buy those cucumbers and make the pickles. My costs are going up, which means that my profits are going down. I have less money to take home because I'm spending all of it on the cucumbers. So I show that by shifting the curve to the left. I'm going to demand fewer pickles at every single price because it's not about the revenue, it's about the cost. Fewer businesses are going to be able to be profitable at every single price. So supply is going to shift left. When supply shifts left, we have a new equilibrium. We dash over and that gives us a price. We'll call it P2. So price has risen. So when supply goes down, price goes up. In other words, supply has an inverse relationship with price. Then we dash down and quantity supplied goes down. Again, quantity supply goes down. So when supply goes down, quantity supply goes down. They have a direct relationship. They're moving in sync together. Okay, now what if the price of vinegar, which I think is also used in pickle production, the price of vinegar is cut in half. It's really, really cheap to get vinegar now. What's going to happen? Well, we jump over here. My costs are going to fall. It's going to cost less to produce pickles, all other things constant. So as a result, supply is going to go up. Businesses are going to be more profitable, more are going to enter the market at every single price point because it's cheaper to make them. Supply shifts to the right. We draw on our new supply curve. Yours will be more beautiful than mine. We're going to call it supply 3. Change that 2 into a 3 expertly, I think. Dash over. You got your new price, P3. Price has fallen. And we dash down. We get our new quantity, Q3. Quantity has risen. In other words, when supply goes up, quantity goes up. They're moving in sync together. But when supply goes up, price goes down. There's an inverse relationship between supply and price. Supply is not nice to the price. Just came up with that. Feel pretty good about it. Gonna keep on going. All right, so keep all these things in mind. We're gonna walk through each of these shifters of supply. All right, next up is technology. Technology, we believe, only moves in one direction. So if there's a new technology, it means it's just making us more productive. It actually pushes down price. When I can produce a lot of things at a lower cost, then my productivity is going to be way up. So it pushes down the price of producing these goods. So my costs are falling with new technology. That means we're being more profitable. The supply is going to shift to the right every single time. So we jump over here. Whenever we have technology, we're going to go from S to S3. We're going to get that new equilibrium. It's going to push up quantity, but it's actually going to push down price. Okay? Hope that made some sense. Let's keep going. Taxes versus subsidies. Taxes versus subsidies. So again, think about cost. A tax is when the government charges a business money. They have to pay more money than just their production costs. So taxes are considered a cost if I have to pay tax to the government. So when the government levies a tax on a business or a firm or a market or on pickles, for example, pickle tax, then a business is going to be less profitable at every price. And so supply is going to shift left. When supply shifts left, price rises and quantity falls, right? As you can see right here. Subsidies are the flip side of that. That's when the government literally gives money to help businesses be more profitable. So if the government's giving you money, then you are definitely being more profitable. Your costs are down. So as a result, supply is going to shift to the right. When that happens, the price falls, the quantity rises. Okay, prices of other goods. This is kind of a tough one for people to wrap their heads around. But really, you're thinking about a good that a business could also produce. So if I'm making pickles, these are pickled cucumbers, I can probably also make something like, I don't know, pickled beets. There's a whole new movement of health nuts out there, people who really care about their bodies, which um, but let's say that people want more beets for some reason. And so the price of pickled beets is going up because beets that are pickled are delicious, I guess. What are you going to do if you're a pickle producer? Well, you're going to see that the beet prices are going up. So you're going to supply more beets. But if you're supplying more beets, it means you're going to supply fewer pickles. So you're going to shift this curve to the left. Supply is falling, pushing up the price and pushing down the quantity. So think of it that way. If price is going up for that other good, I'm going to produce more of that good, and I'm going to produce less of my primary good of pickles. And vice versa, if the price of another good is falling that I was producing, I'm going to produce fewer of that good, and I'm going to supply more of my pickles, my primary good. Okay? Normally, it's the price of something is rising, and so you want to jump into that market. Producer expectation is all about projected price. If I think the price in the future is going to be higher, that means I think there's increased demand. It's going to be a hot item in the future. So I'm going to want to supply more. Supply is going to shift to the right, price falls, quantity rises. If I expect the prices to be lower in the future, that means I believe the industry is going to fail. Yikes. I'm going to try and get ahead of that by reducing my own supply, reducing my own risk. The supply is going to shift to the left, S2, price is going to rise, quantity is going to fall. Okay, next up, number of suppliers. That's as simple as it gets. So if the firm is, or the industry is really profitable, pickles are, everybody wants pickles, then firms are going to enter the market. They follow the profits. And so when those firms enter the market, supply shifts right, price goes down, quantity goes up. And vice versa. If the firm is failing, all kinds of firms are losing money on pickles, and firms are going to leave the market. And when firms leave the market, supply is going to shift left, price rises, quantity falls. Okay, that's all of those. Those are heavily assessed on this one. So let's keep rolling. Next up is the double shift. The double shift. Double shift is the same determinants, still using the same shifters of supply and demand, but you have simultaneous shifts. So oftentimes they'll say, at the same time as this also happens. Or they'll say, this determinant occurs simultaneously, this determinant occurs. Whenever that happens, one is going to be supply and one's going to be demand. You're never going to have simultaneously demand shifting right and left. It's impossible for that to happen. It's always moving in one direction or the other. That makes sense. So if you know one, then you know the other. Okay, so make sure you know your determinants, but let's do a couple of double shifts here. Okay, so first, let's say that demand is going to shift to the right. Okay, so increase in taste or something like that. So I put D2, but I know that at the same time, there was an increase in resource price. The supply is going to shift to the left. So I shift supply to the left, call this S2. Now, where's my new equilibrium? My new equilibrium is not here, it's not here, it's at the intersection of my two newest curves, right? So S2, D2, kind of like R2, D2, but with graphs. Dash over, we have our price. What happened to price? Price went way up. Why? Well, when demand shifts right, prices go up. When supply shifts left, prices go up, right? So because of both of those things happening, prices are definitely rising. What happened with quantity? Right? We dash down here and you might be like, oh, well, quantity slightly went down. The answer is actually it's indeterminate. We call this a question mark. We don't know. Why? Because the quantity went up when demand shifted right, but the quantity went down when the supply shifted left. Right? So one shift pushing up quantity, the other's pushing down quantity. We don't know which one won out. So we have no idea what actually happened with quantity. We know price went up. We don't know what happened with quantity. Okay? Let's try one more. Let's say that supply shifts right. So we'll call this S2, reducing or increase in technology, right? And demand shifts left. Because the complementary good went up in price. And so it went up in price. And so because they're complements, they're moving up in some directions, demand fell. Now, where's my new equilibrium? It's not here, it's not here, it's not here. That equilibrium is actually going to be at S2D2, my two newest curves, because they both shifted. So what happened to price? Price definitely fell. What happened to quantity? Now, you might be tempted to say quantity definitely rose. But the answer is we don't really know. Right? Quantity went up when supply shifted right, but quantity went down when demand shifted left. I just happened to shift my supply larger than my quantity. So it looks like quantity is higher, but that was just because I drew it a little sloppily to the right. And I don't really know. So this quantity is actually a quantity question mark. Right? We don't know. It's indeterminate. So whenever you're doing this, there's always going to be one indeterminate. Always one indeterminate. It might be helpful to think about the relationship between these. Remember that demand has a direct relationship with both price and quantity. So demand's going right, price and quantity are going up. Remember, supply has a direct relationship with quantity, just like demand, moving in the same direction. Supply goes up, quantity goes up, supply goes down, quantity goes down. But supply is not nice to the price. When supply goes right or up, price goes down. And when supply goes left, price goes up. Okay? Keep that in mind. Try out a couple of double shifts. There's quite a few questions on it, but it's really also testing your determinants and whether or not you can track it. You know, hey, when supply shifts and demand shifts, I know I need to find the equilibrium point or the intersection of the two most current curves. That's what you're looking for there. All right. Hope that was helpful. Let's keep rolling. Next up is a government set price ceiling. The government's getting involved because they want to help, right? Something's broken, and so they want to fix it. Doesn't mean they always fix it, but that's what they're trying to do. So if they're creating a price ceiling, it's because they believe the price is too high, oppressive to the consumers. They believe that this good and service is a right. Okay, so how do they do this? Well, they try to lower the price for the consumers. So let's say we're still in our pickle market here because I'm not creative enough to come up with something else. If they believe that pickles are a right, people shouldn't have to be wealthy to have access to pickles. What's going to happen? Well, they believe that this price, P1, is too high. So I need to lower that price so that people have access to it. We actually did this in our handshake marketing class. So I come down here, I put in my new price. This is P2. And this is set by the government. They decide what that price is. Because it's a government thing, we don't dash. It's not created by the market. It's a solid line. And it offsets the rest of the market. The rest of the market up here might as well not exist because it doesn't matter. All right, the government said, hey, doesn't matter what equilibrium price is, you're paying this price and people are selling it for this price. So mandated. Businesses can't sell any more than this price. That's why it's a ceiling. It cannot go through this ceiling. Price is stopped from going any higher. Okay, so we dash over until we hit our first collision. Now we're at disequilibrium. We see that we're no longer where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So this one here we dash down is going to be our Q supplied because I'm intersecting my supply curve. Keep on going until we hit our second collision. This one here is going to be my quantity demanded because I'm entering or intersecting my demand curve. But as you can see, we have a shortage. Demand's really high, supply is really low. So this right here is a shortage. I'll just put in SH because writing shortage would take a long time. Okay, so whenever the government creates an effective price ceiling, it creates a shortage. Now this is a problem. This creates a distribution problem. Who gets it when there's a shortage? Well, it's whoever shows up first. This is why there are huge lines outside of when there's a new iPhone outside of like Verizon, because people know that there's not enough to meet all of the demand, and so they line up. Whoever gets there first gets it. Now, people might be upset and say, hey, that's not a great way to distribute this. And so they'll ask the government to come in and ration it out, right? Only one smartphone per family or something like that. So sometimes the government has to ration to help out with a shortage. But also sometimes if there's no regulation on that, the first person in line will buy all of the iPhones, buy them all up. And then what will they do? They'll resell them, but they're not going to sell them at P2. They're not going to sell them at P1. They know people really want these and they can't get them anywhere else. They're going to push that price through the roof. They're going to charge them an arm and a leg for that iPhone, and people will pay it. We call that a black market, right? Where there's a shortage out there, the market isn't providing it, but somebody who had access to it, bought a bunch of it, is able to resell it and charge a very high price as a result. Okay, so it could potentially lead to a black market. It will definitely lead to a shortage. Now, what if the government sets a price ceiling at P3? They say you cannot charge any more than price 3. That's going to have no effect on the market because the market, left to its own devices, wants to buy and sell at P1, which is lower than price 3. So they're like, okay, great, we can't sell cars for any more than 175,000. Sure, we're going to be fine. We normally sell our cars for 30,000. Like, it's going to be okay. It doesn't affect the market at all. So we call that an ineffective price ceiling. All right, let's keep rolling. Price floor. Price floor. A lot less common, but sometimes it does happen. And this is where the government's trying to help the producers. They're like, you know what? Price is too low. You can't make a profit like that. We want you to be able to keep employing people. So we're going to create a price floor. Price floor means that you cannot charge, or people cannot buy it for any less than a certain price. So if I'm trying to help the producers, then I believe that P1 is too low. This price is too low, businesses can't be profitable. So an effective price floor is above the price. So let's put it up here. We'll call this P2. Again, it's government regulation, so it's not a dotted line created by the market. It's a solid line, and we call this PF, price floor. We have two intersections right here. We're at disequilibrium now. This first one, dashed down, I'm intersecting my demand curve right there. So we call this QD. And then this one here, I'm intersecting my supply curve. So we call this QS. My quantity supplied is very high. My quantity demand is very low. This area right here is a surplus. I'll just put SURP for short. We have a surplus. We have too much. Businesses are producing too much. But unlike a regular disequilibrium in a market where we can move towards equilibrium, it's government law. You can't charge a lower price. So we're not going to move anywhere. This surplus is going to persist for all of time. So what happens? Well, first know that the only goods bought and sold are the ones that are also demanded, right? This gap here is going to be the gap between what is produced and what is actually bought and sold. So that's extra product there. But this surplus oftentimes results in businesses having to shut down, leave the marketplace. If it's a surplus, we did this in a wage market, right? A minimum wage, and we said wage had to be right here. You can't pay people any less than this. Then that surplus is going to result in unemployed people, and that's a big deal. Okay, but down here, let's say they set a price ceiling or price floor, sorry, at P3. They dash it over. They say you cannot charge any less than P3. Well, it has no impact, right? The marketplace says that's fine. We normally charge people at P1. That's where goods are bought and sold here. So no need. We're not going to sell or buy at P3 anyways as a result. So that's an ineffective price floor. Okay, so keep that in mind. Price ceilings are below, price floors are above. But I like to think of it as a house that was turned upside down by the government. Ceilings down here, floors up here. So it's a house turned upside down by government intervention like it does with our marketplace. Floors are at the top, ceilings are at the bottom. Floors because you can't go any lower than this. Ceilings because you can't push the price any higher than this. Okay, hope that makes some sense. All right, that's it. It's every concept that we've gone over. We spent a lot of time kind of understanding the movements of the market in our simulation, but I think that was worthwhile because the rest of this seemed to go pretty easily. So here is the emphasis for the exam. Every single question I went down and said and determined what category it was in. So price is not a shifter. I've said that like a million times at this point, but changes quantity demand or quantity supply. There are two questions that are specifically about that, right? So two specifically about that. Shifters of demand, there are three questions, multiple choice, and also a couple of FRQ graphs you'll have to draw. Shifters of supply, again, three multiple choice questions, and then a couple FRQs on supply. Inferior and normal goods, just definitional. I have one question on there. Make sure you know what that is. There may also be a FRQ graph question about that as well, where you're looking at a shifter. Complementary and substitute goods, there's only one multiple choice question on that, but there is an FRQ on it where you definitely have to draw a graph and know how a complementary or substitute good price change impacts. Remember, complementary goods, they move in opposite directions. So if the price of something goes up, then the demand is going to go down. So complementary move in opposite, substitute goods are moving in the same direction. The price of the substitute good goes up, the demand for the primary good is going to go up. Double shift. There are 4 multiple choice questions, mainly because that's a great way to kind of test all of your knowledge. Do you know what equilibrium is? Do you know what disequilibrium is? Do you know what shifters of demand? Do you know shifters of supply? And can you track a new equilibrium when multiple shifts happen? Do you know what a price change and a quantity change is? And can you tell when something is indeterminate? So it's all encompassing in those double shifts. You know all the content. It might look a little different to you, but you know it all, so just take your time with those. 2 questions where I'm talking about equilibrium specifically, so those should be easy peasy for you. 2 questions where I'm talking about disequilibrium and how that disequilibrium, that surplus pushes the quantity supplied down, pushes the price down, and pushes quantity demanded down until we're moving back towards our equilibrium, right? And then a shortage where a shortage bids the price up, pushes the quantity supplied up, pushes the quantity demanded up until, again, we're meeting in the middle at equilibrium. Shortages and surpluses, be able to identify those, quantify those. So if I have quantity supplied as 100, quantity demanded is 40, you know that that's a surplus of 60, for example. Price ceiling, there's 4 questions on price ceiling. I like that one. So make sure you know how to find a shortage there and know that a price ceiling leads to problems with rationing the goods that actually remain, and it could potentially lead to a black market. And then price floor. There's only one question about price floor, not very common. So be able to identify price floor. And then just for fun, I threw in a circular flow diagram. Sometimes they put this in the same category. Remember, households provide the resources. They're buying goods and services from the product market. Businesses are selling goods and services through the product market. They are getting their resources to make the products from the resource market. Those resources being provided to that market by the household. So just take a gander at that and you should be fine. I'd say I hope this was helpful to you, and good luck on the test on Friday.